Jon DeWaal is a leadership coach who works with entrepreneurs healing from burnout and helps them build integrated lives that balance material success, something we all want, and inner peace, something we all need. Now, if you've ever said to yourself, I thrive on chaos, I know I have, while secretly feeling like you're white knuckling your way through every single day, stop what you're doing immediately and listen to this. You're watching the LeanScaper podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching. Jon, welcome back. It's really good to see you again. I'm excited for this conversation. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Benji. So good to join you guys.
So we're going to have a talk today about burnout. And I want to set it up this way by saying that this audience is a fertile garden for this conversation. And I know this because I've just come out of an event a couple months ago. It was in April. We're recording this at the beginning of July, so a couple months ago, where this conversation came up, and where the conversation was spurred was from a talk that Mark, our founder, gave from stage, talking about his journey with burnout. But what was interesting, and this will resonate with you, Jon, is like that basically stimulated a whole sequence of conversations between a whole bunch of people, and I felt like that became a theme that led into that evening, the next day. It's a thing. It's on people's minds
Mm-hmm.
right now. And so I just say that to give you a little bit of context of like what the listenership is thinking about and wanting right now, and giving you the full green light to dive into this, because I know this is subject matter you know a ton about. But there's this, I think the best entry point for the conversation is to repeat back to you something that you told me all the time and let you riff on it, which I think is interesting. You told me offline that the leaders that you work with often come to you, and in one of the initial conversations or a discovery meeting or early on in your relationship build, they'll say some version of this sentence, which is, Jon, I really thrive on chaos. And I wonder what goes through your mind when you hear that.
Well, I'm immediately curious how they're defining that, but I'm also very suspicious. I don't know that I've ever met someone who's thriving in chaos. They may be good under pressure in terms of they don't get spun up. They can maintain some level of calm, but on the inside of what's going on inside that person, it's a very different story than what you see on the outside. And so that's an important distinguishment when we talk about thriving on chaos. Um, and more often than not, when I'm experiencing someone tell me that, and I get curious about their life and not just how they like what they're dealing with in their business, I'm instinctively curious about who they are as a whole person, this life, this story that they've created for themselves. Um, if I were to bring your spouse or your partner in on the call right now, how would they describe the person you are when you're supposedly not working? Um, and are you able to turn off the chaos that you've been a part of all day, that you apparently thrive in? How present are you with those that you share your life with? The idea being, if you're defining thriving as I'm living my best life, I better hear some great feedback from those that are living their life with you. And that often is not the case when someone describes themselves as thriving in chaos.
So you've just gone through, I was going to ask you, you did it for me. Like, what's the line of questioning? You say you're curious. What's the line of questioning that just intuitively springs up in your mind? You kind of went through a few follow-up questions that you go through. What are the typical answers that you get when you go down that line of questioning? We don't need to name names, nothing specific, but in broad strokes, are there patterns around the types of answers that you receive when you do the follow-up questions and probe into things a little further?
Well, I'm able to ask some of these questions about burnout and thriving in chaos as they're defining it because on some level I myself know what that feels like. I know what it's like in my body to know when my insides don't match the outsides. Um, I know what it's like to appear calm and like I know what I'm talking about, but on the inside know that I'm full of I know what that experience feels like and that I'm trying to mask the insecurities and the fears and the anxieties. And when you give someone, a client, in a dialogue, a bit of a safe environment to let me into their world, they're going to provide all kinds of tells through the way that they talk about their life and their decisions. And even just asking them, like, tell me what you do when you wake up in the morning. I'm like, well, like I reach my phone and I start, checking my texts and news feeds and social media. And what you hear is the beginning of the chaos momentum that begins the moment they begin their day. And I begin to recognize all these little tells that tell me um, about the world inside them that's governing the choice making and the life that they've created. And often they're recognizing this isn't a way that I want to live and work for the long term. It's not working. This isn't the kind of person, leader, spouse, husband. Um, this isn't the kind of parent, this isn't kind of friend that I want to be. This isn't the kind of human that I want to become more of in the world. And they've often, by the time I've reached them or they're working with me, there's an acknowledgement that the path isn't the one that they want to stay on. This isn't working anymore. And
Do you think that there's some part of these people, these leaders, your clients, but more broadly, this entire audience, which is like super entrepreneurial business owners in our case in landscaping, like, do you think that there's a part of this archetypal person? And I use that term because I genuinely believe there is, yes, there's different strengths and different weaknesses, and entrepreneurs are different, but there is kind of an archetypal form that really attracts people to entrepreneurship, and I find most of them are much more alike each other than they are different. So is there a certain part of this profile of person that in your experience is actually maybe addicted to that chaos?
hmm. Well, it's interesting to use that word, addicted to the chaos. I think there might be a lot of truth to that. I'm not a therapist, but there is something about the work environment for a business owner, an entrepreneur, that provides them all kinds of um, activity that helps them respond to the energy inside them, helps them have some level of control over their life. And when you're running a business and all the decisions flow through you, and you got to respond to all the different inputs that are happening all the time. There's something about that environment where you can express so much agency and control, and influence the world around you, whether it's the product, the offering, the service you provide, the customers you speak to, the employees you manage, on and on. There's so much that you get to have a say over, and that has a unique hit to it, for a person.
It's a very it's a very dopaminergic
Yeah.
environment. You are in a place. I this is going to sound like kind of a wacky metaphor, but if you really sit with it for a second, I think there's something here. It's not unlike walking into a casino. Like there's lights blinking, there's buttons to push, there's levers to pull, there's things to spin, there's cards to play. There's like stuff to do and interact when you're a business owner. There's stuff to do and interact with all the time. And so when you win big, you win big. When you lose big. So but there you can't help but see the similarities. It's like I don't think that someone who legitimately struggles with gambling addiction would wish that upon someone else, but they're still addicted to it, and they can't help but push the buttons and be in that environment. And I think that entrepreneurship's a way healthier addiction to have than gambling. I'll just make that really clear. But there's something there where it's like they can't help but play that game of whack a mole as much as they like to gripe about it or stress about it or vent about it. They do keep going back to the thing because they want to like solve that problem, get the hit, solve the next problem, get the hit, be set back, then move forward. And I don't know if people reflect on that clearly enough.
Well, and when you think about the journey of being a business owner, and you're starting out, you're going after those early customers and you're building your business, and it is exciting, right? It's just like that lever that you're pulling, and you see those wins come in and the bank account move forward, and it's a great feeling. But at
Mhm.
the same time, you're also holding like, I gotta spend that money to buy that equipment. I gotta make those investments. I've got that problem that cost me this much. And you've got all these risks that are playing out too, live every single day, requiring decisions. And all the while, you're just trying to keep things moving forward, progressing up and to the right. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of like churn inside you that's constantly driving you forward, looking for those dopamine hits, but also like pushing back against the cortisol hits, the anxiety that's driving a lot of the decision making. And sooner or later, that catches up to a person. You do that year after year for 10, 15, 20 years, and your
It has a
body
cost.
totally, it has a cost to you as a human being, but also to the people around you. I was working with a leader who had been a uh, small business construction contractor, general contractor, and he was in his, I think, 18th or 20th year, and it was a revolving door. And I think in large part because he was still operating as a leader like he was in the first 5 years of his business instead of the actual year 18 or 19 or whatever it was. He was still governing his life like he was just trying to keep things afloat, like he was in a survival raft instead of the beautiful ship that he had created. And it was costing him dearly. Employees were like, I can't work for this guy. He does not he is angry, he treats people poorly. I'm like, just one conversation away from leaving. And I think like the feeling that people are experiencing from someone who's being governed by that chaotic churn of a lot of anxiety. And I keep coming back to that word because I think a lot of that's governing many small business owners.
You used a sentence earlier that I can't help but pull the thread on you when I was asking you what the questions you ask. You said something like, "Oh, well, there are these tells."
Mhm.
Like when you're playing poker with someone,
Yeah.
there is a tell on someone's face if they have a good hand or a bad hand, and if apparently I'm not a great poker player, but apparently if you're really, really adept at reading people, you know what the tells are. So for you, who's really adept at reading leaders, probably struggling with burnout, what are some of the really obvious tells?
When I ask them, How many hours a week do you work?" And their response might be initially be, 40, 50 hours a week or whatever. And then I ask a little bit more like, "Hey, when you're sitting around the dinner table or it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, how often are you drafting emails in your head? Or how often are you checking your phone on what's waiting for you that you need to respond to, and you do respond to that night?" Um, so what I'm hearing then is not 40 or 50 hours. I'm hearing someone who's grinding 70, 80 hours a week on their business. Their mind can literally not rest, even if they're sitting around the table with their family, they're out with friends, whatever it might be. There's this work that's happening in the background or foreground, even when they're with people that they genuinely do love and want to be with, but their mind cannot rest. I think that's a huge tell. Another one, when I ask them, hey, like, what's it like to be you? Tell me what you feel in your body on a day to day basis. Or tell me some of the emotions that you have right now when it comes to you running your life, you running your business. And there's very little real language that's used to describe genuine human feelings.
So what do they
Or
say instead?
they start talking about a problem. They start talking about an employee. They start talking about something that they're trying to solve for. They start talking about the external around themselves, but they have a hard time locating what's going on the interior. They
Mm.
literally lack some of the language to describe physically what their body goes through. Like, what is it? Tell me what you're feeling in your body right now, which is probably like a question they never get asked. Um, Tell me what you feel. What are your emotions right now as you think about your life? One emotion that they can often locate is anger. That's probably one of the easier ones to.
Really?
I'm pissed off all the
Right.
time, like because of that and this person. There's just they start describing the forces around them that they are pointing their finger at. Um, but largely, there's a lack of language to describe anything beyond that, and I think that's a huge tell. They're disconnected from their bodies, their emotions, and some of the thinking that's underneath all of that, the beliefs that are underneath all of that, that this moment is inviting them to be a bit more curious and kind around.
Pardon the interruption, but if you are a mission driven leader in the landscape industry who is hungry, humble, and smart, and you love this show, you should subscribe to this channel. That way you'll never miss an episode. So, John, help us understand what is going on for entrepreneurs when they experience burnout. What is this phenomenon that the internet keeps talking about? We hear about in books and keynotes and podcasts. Like, I don't need a textbook answer. I want yours. Like, what is it?
Yeah, I'll just describe some of my own experience around burnout, and hopefully we'll land on a answer to that question. I think functional burnout is a better way to describe how I can connect to that word burnout, which
Okay.
heard descriptively from another interview I heard several months back. The ability to keep producing, but you're on empty. It's almost like you are chained and imprisoned to a life that you've created, and you don't see another way out other than to keep going, get up, keep going, grind away, and that feeling of being out of options. You don't know what else you could possibly do to change the narrative right now because of all the demands. If you say no, things are going to fall apart. If you don't keep going, things are going to fall apart. Um, if you give any indication that you're experiencing the level of what really is chaotic inside you and you let people know where you're really at, the fear is that you might lose customers. You might lose something of significance in this story that you've built up. And so there's just so much fear and anxiety mixed up into physical and emotional exhaustion at a deep, profound level.
And stuckness, I'm hearing from you.
Very much so, very much so. Stuck in a story that you've created for yourself, but the flywheel has such a momentum to it, that there's a feeling of there's no way to get off. There's no way to change this. Often, though, what does is a choice that's made that's blows your life up. That's the affair, that's the addiction, that's the really bad choice one night that just really makes things so much more worse for the individual. That's worst case scenario, but that comes from a place of deep, deep need, uh, feeling just soul level exhaustion. And I don't mean that word in the spiritual sense, but just like a very, very deep exhaustion and no way to figure out how to get through that.
When you look and you kind of forensically, retroactively go backwards and you study the common path that leads people to this place, are there patterns that emerge? Are there common signs that get often ignored? Like, I feel like this is one of these things you talk to people. Okay, we'll go back to the addiction sort of analogy because I'm just finding it useful for this conversation. You find someone who's at their, fourth meeting in AA, all right? And my whole family is AA, so I feel a little bit entitled to be able to speak to this. You speak to someone who's early in the program. There's a pretty common story. The characters are different, the timeline's different, some of the specifics are different, but here's this word again, archetypally, it's a similar path. It's like, well, it started with this, and then it led to that, and then it led to this other thing, and now I'm in AA, and I really hope I can get my life together. So there's got to be a similar path with burnout, where it's like, it started with this, and then I ignored this thing that happened, and then I doubled down on this other thing that happened, and now I'm sitting on my couch for 4 hours a day, staring at the ceiling, not knowing what to do, and I can't tell anyone about it. So, what are the really common pathways into this situation that you've seen?
I will speak for myself, and I think a lot of the clients that I've worked with, many, especially contractors, and I don't have any research to back this up, but I just noticed this theme and pattern in my work with individuals. And again, in my own story, there's some trauma in a person's life. Um, and often that goes back to family of origin. They grew up in a very chaotic home, and or they had some type of an experience in their childhood that was traumatic. And it is the experience of that traumatic event that's living inside their body that's never been addressed, never experienced deep care around, never given language for and attunement or relational safety with, so that that experience can be processed through. And what you notice in a life that's in that narrative is the way they choose to survive, given the story that they have, winds up in the life that they've created. It shows up in the life that they've created, and you see it a lot in business. I think so much in business is being governed by this survival learned skill that comes out of our childhood, our traumatic experiences, that often go back to, again, like our childhood. And that was certainly part of my story growing up. And I've seen this again and again with clients, that these stories have never been told and never been connected to the choices that they now still make as an adult daily, to go from one day to the next, one reactive decision to the next, one anxious way of living day after day to the next. And so I think that's a very common thread. And again, I'm not a therapist, but I get in these conversations with clients who begin to tell me about themselves and their story and their life, and they begin to recognize how so much of the chaos that they've created in their life and story, and a lot of success too. Like, a lot of these clients, just like really successful businesses, they're killing it, they're making a lot of money, and on one metric, they're super successful, but they lack intimacy with friendships, they lack intimacy with their spouse, with their kids, with their employees. There's a loneliness there, and they just grind away day after day after day, continuing that narrative of up and to the right success. So that's a really important data point. And a part of that for many, and I can so relate to this, is the ability to slow down long enough to connect to where you're at in your body, your emotions, what your needs are in any given moment, and let that inform your next step from an authenticity standpoint. That's a word that I think, we get thrown around a lot. I hear it a lot. But when I use that word authenticity, and I think an individual's ability to authentically live their life, the ability to connect to their gut intuition, the ability to recognize the reality of where they're at in their body, their emotions, and their thought life, that's guiding them into their decision making. And many leaders, many people I work with, really struggle in that area, and that's another important tell.
What has the reading, and lived experience that you have, tell you about what's actually going on? What is actually, and I don't need a hardcore neuroscience answer to this, layman's terms is fine. What's going on
That's all I got.
physiologically? Yeah, great. What's going on physiologically, psychologically, and spiritually, do you think, for these people when they're in this spot?
Well, physiologically, with what I know of what's going on in the body, the cortisol levels, the flight or flight response that's going on because of the stress in their life is provoking them to move in a particular way through their day, through their life. And that's been on repeat for a long, long time. Um, and a lot of the energy that's guiding their decision making, the choices that they make, actually, I believe, falls under the category of the victim orientation. They're not aware of really what's making them choose what they're choosing. They're just being reactive. And the creator within them wants them to slow down, wants them to pause, wants them to be authentically connected to their own life and their voice and something much deeper, so that they can respond from a heart space, a more passion guided space, something that's far more relational, that's not so concerned with all of those metrics of what's on spreadsheets, but really knows that at the end of the day, what matters, truly matters to us as human beings, is to stay connected to others that we're sharing our life with, and to bring our authentic self to those relationships. That's a beautiful story. And so I think that's a big part of what's not happening when we're in a survival place, when we're more in a victim orientation, when we're being reactive to the the anxiety that we're holding and carrying in our bodies. And that again happens at a physiological level.
What impact, I've got a few things just noted here. I wanted to ask you, so in these categories, the impact that being in a state of burnout has on them. One is decision making, another is quality of work, a third is presence. Like, are they just present with their people? How they show up for how they lead, and then their family life. So maybe we just start at the top. You've actually alluded to this a couple times. You said it has an impact on decision making. What impact does it have? Do they play scared? Do they make bad calls? Do they blow big decisions all the time? Like, what's the actual observed impact it has on decision making?
Well, I don't see this is part of the challenge in answering that question is a lot of individuals who are governed by fear and anxiety will make a lot of great decisions. They'll because they're trying to create safety for themselves and for those that they're leading. So we can't just say it's all bad or it's all good. We
Hmm.
have to hold the both and. There are certain choices they're making that do create a sense of safety for them and the company that they're leading. And often that safety comes in the form of sound financial choices. But there's often a cost that they're not factoring into some of that decision making, like the relational piece, like what their own experience of enjoyment of the life that they are living should include. Is their life bigger than just the actual like day to day role and function they play as the owner of that company? Or are they largely just defined by that one part of who they are day after day? And so I think there's something there that is being. I'm starting to lose the thread a little bit, Benji. Maybe ask that question one more time.
Well, I'm wondering if the cortisol impacts the way that they make decisions. I know that when I am stressed out to the max, I will generally have a much more sky is falling negative orientation to fall. I have a lower risk tolerance. I have a less optimistic outlook on the future. I underestimate the perceived upside of situations, and I overestimate the perceived risk. I know that from doing the journaling and the meditation, which we'll get to later, studying myself in these different states. Where I'm like, yeah, I can sort of do enough. I have enough awareness to maybe do an audit of the last month. What kind of calls am I making over the last 30 days? Well, they're pretty pathetic loser calls. You must be stressed. Whereas when I'm in a place of abundance and I've taken care of myself and my health is good and my sleep is good, I'm like, bring it on. I'm all in. Chips on the table. Let's go. And I don't know which one's better. Give me another 20 years, we'll find out. But it's a felt like I can notice the difference in the way that I call shots with myself, with my finance, with my team, with our strategy, all sorts of stuff. And so that's the thing I wonder if you have perspective on.
Yeah, I love how you just named that as like the felt experience, connecting it back to your body. You like literally experiencing something in your body that tells you I'm on the right path. This is a good path. Um, that integrated experience, I think that's huge. When going back to what I said earlier about trauma and how that certainly is part of my story and others that I've worked with, it disconnects you from a relationship with your emotions, your body, the needs that you have there. It makes you more of a floating head moving through the world rather than an integrated human being, making the life that you have. And so I think, and then that also would, of course, contribute to that negative self-talk, that negative view of others, the world being threat rather than this place of abundance, and you having the confidence to navigate all of that. Very different narratives that are going on, as you described. One day, feeling the insecurity or the imposter, or I'm overwhelmed and can't make it happen, or whatever the narrative is there. In contrast to the other side, where you feel deeply connected to who you are, moving authentically into those sales calls.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
So one of the things that I've noticed as well when I'm in this space is the quality of work diminishes. And so when I say quality of work, I mean the stuff the stuff that you ship. And so when you're a leader and you have a team, you have the luxury in many cases of having a lot of people to do stuff for you. And so somebody might listen to this and they might actually be burnt out and they go, this is a stupid question because I have people for that. But no, that's not true. There is actually still a lot of work that you still output. It's just almost not looked at as work. You build strategy. You set the tone culturally. You, in theory, host and hold good meetings or good spaces for conversations to happen. I mean, even the highest level visionary who's delegated every task away still has work product that they must do. They might call it something different, but it's still work. And I wonder if you can comment where I'm going. I'm sort of backing into a question by sharing my own experience. My experience when I'm in a burnt out state is the quality of my work is shit. Like I ship bad product really consistently. There's typos. It's not thought through. It's half baked. It's rushed. Um, a lot of the times I'm just box checking versus actually doing the thing. I just I actually want the dopamine hit of crossing the thing off my list than I want more to do the thing well. And that's been my experience. I wonder if that lines up with yours.
Very much so. Personally, what I observe in others, I would actually put that in the category of more of a victim orientation as well. Um, when I'm in that place, I am just reacting to what's in front of me. The client that I have to see next. I've got a few minutes to prepare. What do I need to prepare? How do I show up to that hour and just hope that I'm able to provide what they're looking for and they don't know that I haven't done much to prepare for that session, right? It's just it's crap work, right?
Right.
It's not bringing my best. It's my 30% and they deserve a whole lot more than that. Um, versus being guided by a more intentional, a more less hurried, a more able to take a breath
Yeah.
and creating space in a day and a week for that breath to occur and be more heart and passion led. I know, I know why I'm showing up to this next phone call, this next client, this next, fill in the blank, that work that you're shipping. And that deeper connection to your why and why you're here to do this work as this once in a lifetime experience of you being here on this planet. That's a hugely important um, work that we're supposed to be about as human beings. And if we don't, like we're just going to lose out on so many days where there was a momentum that was carrying us rather than us being the authors of our stories.
In your experience, what are the various outcomes from here? So we're just kind of like lingering on this idea of someone that is in a state of burnout. And the way that I picture this, or I conceptualize this in my mind, it's like there's door one, there's door two, and there's door three, or maybe there's five doors. I don't know. I can't. That seems like a lot. But are there really like what are the common outcomes? Like, hey, it's like crash and burn, take a break. Like, how many doors are they and what's behind them in your professional experience? What do you see with your aggregate experience? What, generally speaking, the math says the outcomes are? Do you get what I'm asking in that question?
I kind of think I do. Let me answer one of those that comes to mind and see if I'm on the right path. More often than not, when I experience a leader in burnout, their easiest answer to that problem is, I just got to get out of here. Meaning, I got to go find another thing to start, another company to go work for. I just have to find the off ramp.
Mm.
Believing that the problem was the context um, rather than addressing the core issue, which is inside themselves. And if I get to work with the leader before they find that off ramp, quite often they recognize it's not about the context, it's about me and how I'm living within that context.
What's
And
that
that's
expression, John? Wherever you go, you are.
wherever you go, there you are. Right. Right.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
like, cool. So
Yeah.
let's change it from a landscaping business to go and start a technology business or go get into real estate development. I mean, I've seen people do
That's
these
right.
quote unquote pivots so many times. And
Yes.
3 years later, they're in the exact same scenario. They've
Hmm.
just reskinned it.
Hmm. What's the common denominator here? You. Yeah. So that's worth paying attention to and recognizing there's the pattern that you're carrying with you from one context to the next is you. So that's probably one of the more common ones. I just had this happen with a leader who worked. He's an administrator at a pretty big school. Left his school and went to another state, picked up his whole family, started over, and realized, oh my goodness, the work that I thought I was leaving behind has followed me. And it's inside me. And I haven't done some of the work that I know that I was being asked to do back where I was working in Colorado. But I asked the entire family to pick up and go.
Right.
Right. So that's that's a regretful choice on one level, but it's also with that awareness, like, okay, lean in, lean in. There's an invitation there in that discomfort. Stay with it. Prevent yourself from making another big change that might take another few years to unwind and cost those around you even more as the stakes get higher. Um, yeah.
So that is a really good segue into I think a great section here. I want to move to sort of a practical roadmap, playbook, whatever you want to call it. So if off ramping doesn't work, what does? And you've got I think four things that
Yeah.
are like really practical, implementable. This is what to do if you're in this spot, type recipe that I'd love for you to walk us through.
Yeah. The practice that I require every single one of my clients to do is a journaling practice. I say to them, if you don't have 20 to 30 minutes to dedicate to this work that you're paying me good money to do with you, then we are not a good fit. You've got to show up to your life at least 20 to 30 minutes every day in some form or fashion. And so I hammer that really hard at the front end as an invitation. But at the same time, if this is not something you're wanting to do, then I'm not your guy. Uh, the first practice is called undivided journaling. Um, what divides a human being? Uh, Fear and anxiety when they're not conscious of what's there inside them. What helps heal a lot of that is just bringing curiosity and a kindness to what's going on inside them. So this whole journaling practice is about that. And I simply ask them to do a series of steps with this practice. The first step is pick something from the day that's kind of gnawing at you. It could be a conversation, an email, a decision you have to make, a conversation with a friend or a spouse. You fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. You just know that it's gnawing on you a bit. It could be a lot of it, but pick something, describe it in a few sentences. The next step is physical sensations. What's going on in your body as you describe this situation? I'm agitated, I'm restless, I can barely sit down, my energy is really low. Just put some language to that. And that's a really important step because what I'm inviting them to do is to connect to the here and now of their physical body, which for many of them, they're just like thrashing, grinding day after day after day. And I can really relate to that. It's called compartmentalizing. If you can't connect to where you're physically at, that's a problem. You need to know where you're physically at. And along with that, step three is what emotions are you holding? Pick two or three. A lot of my clients, again, like I said earlier, lack language for that. So I give them an emotion wheel. You can find these all over the internet.
You're
Um,
kidding. You
no,
actually
yeah,
it's literally a wheel so that they can self-select.
I got it right
Oh
here.
my goodness. Th that we gotta pause on that. That is how out of touch that is how out of touch with their body and their inner
Yeah, yeah,
world someone in this
yeah,
state is that you literally have to
yeah,
you have to give them a doll and say, "Where does it
yeah,
hurt?"
yeah, 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 totally.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I can totally relate to that
Well, I
as
can
a
empathize with it too. I'm just
yeah.
kinda stunned by the visual of it.
Yeah,
Here's a
yeah.
wheel, buddy. Pick which one you feel. That's crazy.
Yeah, but there's power in that, right? When we can name like, "Oh, like that is what's going on in my body. Oh, that's what that feeling is, emotionally speaking." There's power in that. When you connect emotions and feelings and all the stuff that's going on in your body, and then you take them to the next step in the journaling practice, which is there a need within what you're experiencing right now that you can begin to identify? And so here's an example, like, I just need some assurance that the decision I'm about to make is a good one. That's a good need, assurance. Awesome. You just named that really, really well. Later on in the practice, in this journaling practice, the last step is what's a step you can take to find that assurance? Well, I think my wife's a great sounding board. Like, I need to just go have a conversation with her, or I need to go talk to my business partner. I haven't done that in 3 months about this area of our work together. I need to explain what it is that I'm going through and the decision I need to make, and some of the options I have, and my gut's telling me to do X, Y, and Z. I need assurance that that's a good path that we should go down. Great, that's a powerful next step. But what they have chosen to do before that is to really quiet down, pause, and connect to really what's driving them forward and connect to that, and then make a good choice out of that. So, to get to that last step is a really important part of this practice in the undivided journaling. Right before that, though, I'm also asking them in a movement that I call intimacy, which is a word that I imagine a lot of contractors like, I don't use that word. That's what are you talking about? When I say intimacy, I mean kind words that you speak to yourself. A lot of us, right? We just have this flywheel of self-criticism in its various forms. Imposter syndrome is a really common one. That's just degrading us over and over and over again, often on repeat, and often we're not even aware of it. So when I invite them into that space of kindness through this journaling, they're inviting themselves to speak words of self-compassion, kindness to themselves, right? And that movement combined with a good choice moving forward in that last step, that's transformative. You do that on repeat day after day after day, and you're building up a muscle that helps you connect your authenticity and helps you create really good relationships with those around you over time, baby steps over time to get there. And that I think for a leader who's more reactive, who's more conditioned to grind and burn out, is a powerful step to take. So that's one of the practices that I teach my clients on the front end of our work, and they do that throughout our work together. And it's a habit that I hope they carry with them for years to come.
So, journaling, one. What else works?
Uh, I think this next one is just so important for our culture at large, especially for men. Friendship,
Oh my
and
god, yeah, that
I,
connects.
I don't mean just like drinking buddies. I mean a small pocket of people that you can bring your full lived experience to. So, where you especially experience some of your deepest, most frustrating life moments, your insecurities, your shame, your failures, as well as your deep desires and dreams, just your lived experience of what it means to be a leader, what it means to be an intimate partner, a parent, any number of experiences that are connecting to your life and you holding that for others, developing a soulful experience of friendship is so, so important. And I think so many of the people I've worked with over the years are just deeply lonely. No one knows their lived experience beyond what they do in their work. And they recognize that's like, ugh, no way to live. That's not what they want. And that's not what they planned for either. That's not how they plan their life to go. And here they are, in their 40s and 50s, and they have no friends, the kind that I'm describing.
Why do you think it's especially hard for men?
I think our culture conditions us um, to hide a big part of what it means to be a man. Um, how many men do you know that can easily talk about their interior world and some of the problems they're holding and be moved to tears and some of the sorrow and grief that's there, and share that openly and vulnerably with a group of friends?
Mhm,
It's not
mhm.
common, right?
No.
Culturally, we are conditioned that that's not something that you do. And that's often from a very early age, a very early age. That's not what boys are supposed to do.
Well,
Um,
it's so interesting to hear you say this because I feel like I'm kinda going through my own version of this right now, which is I'm 33, right? And I've been really blessed to put together a life for myself that's, like, pretty weird and unique in a really good way. And I think that everyone listening can say the same thing. They've put together a business that probably no one expected them to build. They've got staff and employees and responsibilities that people underestimated them their whole life, never thought they would get there, and all of a sudden there's this picture. So for me, it's like I'm like, there's this whole tranche of subject matter that lives inside me, memories, thoughts, experiences, challenges, things that I feel every day, and I don't have a freaking clue where to go with it. It just sits there. I'm like, and look, I have my drinking buddies from my friends in my 20s, and we partied together for a decade, and I still love those people, and I see them once a year when we go to a festival, and it's fun, and that's great. But like, I can't honestly tell you, John, that those are like my dear close friends anymore because the experience has shifted, has veered so much. And I'm not even gonna I wouldn't even go so far as to say they haven't grown, I'm growing out of I've outgrown that. I often find that rhetoric really, like, nauseating and annoying. It's just like, we just have different day-to-days. And so,
Mhm.
where I'm going with this is, it's not obvious to me what the practical solution is here. You could say go make more friends, but as a 30-something, 40-something, 50-something, 60-something, especially a man, it's like, "Well, where do I go?" Well, where do I honestly don't know. Do I go to Reddit forums and try to find people with the same weird interests as me? Do I go to the bar? Do I is there an app like Bumble or Tinder, but for friend making? Like, it's actually quite a big challenge to do that, especially when you're deep into career, deep in responsibility. For many of our listeners, also deep into monogamy and child rearing and family
Yeah.
building and all that stuff. It's like, great, okay, John's right. I do need more friends. Where do I find them?
Yeah, but it's the type of friends you're describing that you want more of, not in quantity, but in quality. And I
Yes.
think for many of us, we have, a pool of friends that we can genuinely say are people we enjoy spending time with. But it's the courage and the vulnerability to share some of what's going on for you, as well as to ask the questions that no one else is asking them. That willingness to do that, whether it's in a one-on-one setting or maybe it's a small group over breakfast or whatever, when someone willingly goes there, it's amazing what happens. One of two things. People will either go like, "This is getting really awkward, and I'm gonna like lock up and not share anything else moving forward," or I just heard someone share something of their life, and it somehow makes it safer for me to share something from my life. And vulnerability, also known as courage, creates safety for others to do the same. And I see that again and again in my own life and in the life of those that I'm watching like go through this process. When that hunger for deeper connection shows up and it brings the courage within them out to ask that question or to share vulnerably with a friend or a spouse or a fill in the blank, a colleague, out of that desire for more. That's when a deeper relationship begins to happen. That's when things really thicken up in a different way. But it does require someone to go there. And so, yeah, I'm sure you could find an app that allows you to gather a group of people around a shared activity. But after that activity or in the midst of that activity, can someone raise the question like, hey, like, tell me about one moment in the last 6 months where you just crashed and burned and failed?
Mhm.
But tell me one moment where, you just like really had a huge, beautiful, intimate win with your spouse. What was that like? Tell
Yeah,
me. I want to know. What was the last thing that you cried about and why?
right.
Like anyone willing to ask those kinds of questions is going to open up a different kind of conversation.
I think one of the things that I'm really excited about with what we're doing at the LeanScaper community is just is creating an environment where those friendships can develop and foster really organically because look, we are building an accelerator for landscape business owners who want to run lean businesses in a rapidly transforming industry. We have a really well-defined ideal candidate profile. The box is pretty small. Like, this isn't it's like you are this one kind of person, and your business might be this big or it might be this big. There's a few wrinkles to it, but for the most part, everyone in the room of these events, I'll be in Charlotte in 10 days, there'll be 300 people there, right? And all pretty much all 300 of those people have a very, very similar lived experience. And I think one of the things that I find really cathartic and fun and exciting and inspiring is It is I've yet to be to a LeanScaper event where there is not some form of crying by day 2 or day 3, and it's not this is not, by the way, inauthentic, sort of quasi uncomfortable, weird cult behavior. It's really, really genuine sharing that people have clearly been yearning to do for a while and have just been given an opportunity to do it for the first time. So I'm scrambling to put together a talk, and it's going to be tactical, and we're going to teach people lessons, and we're building tools, and we're building software. All that's great. Truly amazing. What we're doing is awesome. What gets me really excited about is like giving is facilitating an environment where those types of connections can happen for an audience who very clearly needs it and doesn't know where else to go get it.
Amen.
You and I were talking before we recorded. You're like, I'm really fascinated. What was the stat you shared about the group about the you something you think group stuff is X amount more effective than one on one?
Group experiences, in the world of coaching that I'm a part of, are 5.3 times more impactful for a person's growth and transformation than one-on-one work. And I see this lived out again and again in the groups that I lead, in the retreats that I lead, where you hear and watch. I work a lot, mostly with men. You hear them say things that they have been holding for years, and it's coming out of them with the emotion that's there. And like, I don't even know why I'm crying. I don't even know why this. Like, I can't even. What's happening? It's because it's been in them for so long. They've
Mhm.
had no place to have it be witnessed, right? And we are, as human beings, the experience of being witnessed by someone else is core and central to who we are as humans. And that's what you're describing, like getting into a room. Like, I want to be in that room because it's an opportunity for me to connect to another group of people who are witnessing one another and delighting in one another and creating safety for that to occur. And that's transformative. That's
Mhm.
huge.
Mhm.
Suddenly, this is what it means to be human, not just these productivity, profit making machines,
Totally. Totally.
right? That's no way to live.
I know.
Could be a part of it, but that's no way
I
to
know.
live.
I'm tired of talking about KPIs, John.
Well, if one of those
There's
KPIs
no
could
end in
be
sight. Yeah, no, I know.
the connection you have to your heart and soul and others that you want to share your life with meaningfully.
You talk about the movement towards rest and play.
Yeah, it's a really important one for me. Play. It's one of the some I don't do enough, but I think it's one of the highest form of rest and self care. Play. Choosing that regularly in your life, and I'm saying something very different than at the end of the day, I just unplug, have dinner, throw on a show, maybe 2 or 3 episodes. Kinda like we're not talking about that kinda checking out, numbing out. We're talking about truly letting your body experience the presence of rest and connection, especially with yourself and others. And play is just a beautiful form of that. So you can ritualize that. You can choose to do that in the context of, say, a pickleball club or, fill in the blank, right? I make it really simple for a lot of clients too, that just simply choose to take a 15-minute walk without your phone every single day. I don't care when you do it. For many, that's like asking them to give me their kidney, and it's impossible to do without leave their phone behind. But how they begin to like really uncouple from the work and the dings that come from those notifications and the thrashing on whatever they're thrashing on for that morning, to set it aside, to go on a walk and just simply notice trees, flowers, animals, people, houses, whatever, beautiful landscaping. Um, yes, do that. You're letting your mind just wander into rest. And that's an important part of what I think it means to reconnect to your authentic self. And doing that over time will be such a gift. So, whatever that looks like.
Well, and is there an internal barometer that we can use to grade the quality of play and therefore rest we're getting? And by because there was something baked into your response, which was the idea that there's a hierarchy of like play and rest quality. Like in other
Hmm.
words, like okay, like 3 episodes of The Office is better than nothing, but we can do better also. So it's sort of like
Uh-huh.
what it's different for everyone, but how do we know if we're doing the good rest and play versus maybe the lazy, expedient, convenient rest and play, also known as Netflix and or any other type of screen?
Well, I'll speak for myself. When I do, the version of your what you're describing, Netflix, when I get to the end of the third or whatever episode, my mind can shift to, oh crap, I've got that tomorrow pretty quickly. I can go from that quote unquote rest to the thing that I now am thrashing on in my mind, and that feeling some sense of anxiety and dread over for the following day, versus playing football with my kids on the beach last weekend, and the laughter and the rolling around in the sand and the playfulness that's happening there with my boys. That kind of experience didn't leave me with the same mind space.
It's hard to get distracted from.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's almost a good indicator. Like, and for me, it's like sailing and motorcycle riding. For Mike Lasicki, our CEO, it's pickleball. For like for insert name, insert activity is different for everyone. But like that's the barometer. It's like how present does it force you to be, and how difficult is it for you to automatically pull yourself out of it? Sitting there watching The Office reruns. That's a slippery slope. You can be pulled back into bull like
Totally.
in a split second. Football
Yeah.
on the beach with your sons, you're kind of glued into that scenario,
That's
that
right.
scene a little bit more reliably, aren't you?
That's right. That's a good way to put it. And maybe if there's a hierarchy, to be able to do that alongside others that you're doing that with, like bodies, I use that word intentionally, like bodies in a shared activity that's about play together, is profoundly impactful. I think at even a cellular level. Like, because our bodies are then, like, if you think about the energies of cortisol and all the adrenaline that's coursing through our bodies when we're trying to address whatever's stressful, versus the dopamine and the connections that are happening when when our bodies are spending time with others around a shared activity. That's quite an experience. It often leaves me feeling gratitude, like, oh, so good. I want more of that. This is the good stuff, right? I don't have that experience after watching the, third episode of The Office. I never have that experience on social media. Like, oh, so good. Said no one ever.
That's what are you
Right?
talking about? That's exactly what I do after a 90-minute doom scroll. I'm like, ah, so I gotta do
Just
this.
what I
I gotta
needed.
do this more often. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
what's the last ingredient in the recipe for someone who's in burnout?
I would put a really good eye on how you start and end a day. And I have an exercise that I have clients do just called First Last 60. What are the first 7, 8, 10 things that you do in the morning and the same in the evening? And I'm not just talking about, like, I get up, I shower, whatever. I'm talking about creating space to really orient around the care that your body needs, the mindset that you need as you step into the day, and the same thing at the back end of the day, so that you can care for your body, your mind as well on that end, and leave behind what needs to be left behind, right? Making that as a habit to really think through those two parts of your day. I think the way that we start and end the day matters more than we think. And so I place an emphasis on that for myself and with a lot of my clients, especially those that are just thrashing and grinding day after day. And it's a hard discipline to learn. So we start small. We start small.
Yeah.
Um, just come up with 3 or 4 that you can consistently do on the front end and the back end of every day, and may at least one of those involve you connecting with your mindset, your thinking, the priorities you have for that day. Just looking out at, like, oh, as I start a day, I'm thinking about these 3 meetings that I have, and how do I want to enter those 3 meetings? What do I need to tell myself? What are some of the, ghosts in my closet that I'm wrestling with as I go into those meetings, right? I need to bring some kindness. I need to bring some curiosity to that place that's just thrashing in my mind as I go into the day, right? So to really begin and end the day in that same way.
John, there's something that you taught me that I think is a great closer here. And maybe you got it from someone else, but you told me a couple years ago, when it comes to entrepreneurs and leaders, a pattern you observe all the time is that every strength eventually becomes a weakness. And I want you to just explain that idea as a place to close.
I'll make it personal. I am I'm good at being stable and predictable in that way with my clients. They can expect a certain kind of countenance and presence with me as I walk with them through whatever it is that they're walking through. That's a strength that I bring. I bring calm, and in that, I bring a sense of safety for them to show up. And in that, I can often offer them some really good thoughts and ideas that they need that meet them where they're at. But if I lean too heavily into that, if I don't let the parts of me that feel fearful, anxious, insecure, vulnerable, if I don't connect back to that, that becomes a liability for me. I become a facade or an image that I'm trying to manage rather than a human being that holds all of those things. And I just think my work here as John is to learn how to be John, and the fullness of who I am as John. And I think that's true for all of us. And it's okay to have these parts of us that feel insecure, that are scared. I think one of the most powerful things I do with a client is to say, you know, I have no idea what you're supposed to do with that.
I wish I heard that more often.
Can I
Everyone's
just
so
be honest with you? Like, I don't know
yeah.
how to respond. I have no idea. That's so hard what you're going through. I'm at a loss right now. I'll probably have a thought tomorrow, but right now I don't.
It's hard to do though. Everyone wants to
It
have
is.
some pithy take, some expert insight, especially now in the podcast era. We're all expected to conjure up these perfectly timed, eloquent pieces of advice. And to be honest, man, like I do this with my team all the time. I literally can think of examples this week where I did exactly what you're saying. My actual thought was, I don't have a freaking clue what to do here or what you should do either, but let me make something up on the fly, just like ChatGPT does when you ask it and skate through an answer and let's get off of this Zoom call so I can go and figure it out.
Yeah. It seems counterintuitive, but I every time I have done that, um, it almost just like there's this collective that I feel from the other side that tells them it's okay for them to be exactly where they're at. And guy, we need more of that in this world, right? I don't trust someone that has an answer to everything or has something that's, I don't know, we don't say tweetable anymore, right? Whatever the like, we don't Xable. I don't trust someone that has a response to every single question and seems like they have it all together and they're going to map out a perfect path for someone to take every single time. But if you can tell me, like, I don't know, I don't have an answer for that. I feel a lot of uncertainty, right? I'm kind of scared of what we should do next, but I bet if we like put our minds together, we'll figure it out. I think there's enough people in this room that we'll get there. But I tell you what, I'm not gonna leave this table. I'm gonna stay here in it with you guys, even if I don't know what I'm doing on this right now. Whew, I can breathe, right? I can trust that person. I feel safer, and I'm willing to show up and even work harder because of that. That's counterintuitive, but it is a powerful move for us to be considering as leaders, as humans. Because when I could do that with my spouse too, like when I can tell her like, this conversation's scary. I don't know how to talk about this right now. Um, I just
It
gotta start with that.
it gives a lot of freedom and lateral space. Yeah, and I think to be honest, people want that more than they want the answer most of the time when they're asking those questions anyway. So we actually work harder to create a worse outcome. The answer is I don't know, and that's fine too. Um, this has been another amazing conversation, John. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So much wisdom along the way. I think if anyone is wants to pick up a conversation about burnout or anything else with you, where do people connect with you? Just give us kind of like, I don't know, socials, website.
Reach out to me on our website, in a liminal space.org. You can email me, John at liminalspace.org. And that's a mouthful, but perhaps you can put that in the show
I'll
notes.
put it in the description.
Yeah. I'm actually not on social media. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, but that's it. Uh, I got off social media years ago because it
Fair.
just wasn't helping.
Website and email. I will put that in the description. Thank you so much, my friend. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
So good to be with you, Benji. Thanks for having me.